Musical Talk. Hello and welcome to a Musical Talk mini episode. I'm Thos and today we're going to be talking to James Lark, the man behind Tony Blair the Musical and Miracles at Short Notice, and now bringing to London his new show for all the family, The Snow Spider. James.
Hello.
Splendid to see you again. It
nice
always is,
you.
actually. Yeah. And one of the great things for me is the fact that you write and then you write something new, and that's why we're here today.
Yes.
Tell us about your new show.
My new show is, first of all, I can't possibly take all the credit for it. I've co-written, or rather even co-adapted, a book called The Snow Spider, which was written by Jenny Nimmo in the 80s, and it's a story about a 9-year-old boy who discovers that he's a magician. So far, so Harry Potter, but it's actually quite different to that. It's set in Wales, in a kind of rural community. He lives on a farm, and at the start of the story, he's given these strange gifts by his grandmother, and they lead him down a pathway of discovery about himself, about his ancestors. There's a lot of Welsh mythology in there, and this also rather scary other world comes into it as well, from which a silver spider arrives to help him through his journey, hence the title, The Snow Spider.
So not quite Jiminy Cricket and Pinocchio.
Not really, no. It's a very complex and layered story, and at the back of it is a family who've lost a child as well, which is quite a grown-up adult thing and quite a serious thing, and I suppose there's something lovely in the way it is dealt with through a story about magic. You have the two realities. It's a bit like, dare I say it, Pan's Labyrinth, where you actually have the fairy tale world and the horrific world of the Spanish Civil War.
So it's a fusion almost of imaginary and real and context and atmosphere,
yeah,
and narrative.
And the horrible thing about Pan's Labyrinth is that the fairy tale world that the child in that film disappears into is as horrible as the real world she lives in. I think in this case we have a lovely story about someone bringing people to terms with the situation they're in through magic.
Now this is a family show, and I mean it in its truest sense. It works at several different levels, I think, is that fair?
Absolutely. In fact, from the experience I've had with audiences who saw the workshop production we did last year, children are immediately enchanted by the magical element, and slightly older people are completely freaked out by the rather disturbing elements of the story.
So it's almost as though the nursery fairy tale stuff engages with the nursery, whereas the horror of the nursery and the background.
Yeah, I don't want to overplay the horror because it's not a horrific story. It is a lovely, but it's a coming of age story as well. It's a journey of discovery, and
with that comes sadness.
There's a great deal of sadness in it. The reality in it comes from the characters who we take very seriously and who do have big issues to deal with.
Now, let's talk about it as a musical, or almost beyond a musical, because it is, well, I think it's probably best if you describe it, but it does appear to be more than you might think.
Well, it is musical,
yes.
And I suppose it really defines, it's how do you define a musical?
How long have you got?
Well, the nature of musicals has changed a huge amount, as we all know, and what we are doing is extremely musical. The only way we felt we could tell this story was through music, and there's a reason I've both written the music and worked on the script. And going into it as a co-adapter all the way through, especially in the early days when we really didn't know how we were going to do half the stuff that happens in the book, which is full of strange and extraordinary and spectacular occurrences, all the way through we were saying, well, does this need a scene of dialogue, or does it need a stage direction and something which we can explore and find a way to do? And at the back of our minds was always the idea that the music was going to be the main way of telling that half of the story.
It's so much a catalyst of storytelling, but even then the music's in different ways, isn't it? There's ambient music and there's not incidental music, but if you like, underscore or music in its own right. And
the underscore, as it were, in a almost a cinematic way, I suppose, is constantly there. It's not that music is played through every second of every scene. It's just that the musical journey, I've written it very much as a continuous piece, and I feel like on a musical level you've not heard the whole piece unless you've heard it through from the beginning to the end. So these little fragments that fade in and out are part of this ongoing journey, and they tell you what is going on with characters, because every character in it goes through massive changes in some cases. So yes, there's that element. There are songs which are sung by characters because they are singing a song in the scene. The scene calls for music in that sense. I suppose songs in the way they're used in cabaret.
Yeah.
And then
we understand diegetic and non-diegetic on this programme. We spend nothing.
Well, I'm very glad.
We spend all our time talking about it. So the characters are singing songs
in that case,
in the story.
it's a beautiful fusion of diegetic and non-diegetic, and sometimes when the two cross over, that's even nicer. And then there is music to be the spectacular, to be the magical in scenes that we don't have the special effects or the West End budget, but what we do have is a cast who are extremely adept musically and also physically, and working with an extremely talented choreographer, we've created she'll hate to be called I can't call her a choreographer. She's the movement director, and she was very specific about that, because it's not really choreography, it's not dance, it's the whole show. The movement informs the show as much as the music does, really.
So everything depends on everything else, and it's contextual. Yeah. But also direct.
Yes.
I mean, forgive me, this sounds like a huge kaleidoscope of a sensory piece almost. Would that
yeah, definitely. And the form, it invites the audience to enjoy the fact that we're telling the story. We're not pretending. There's a spider at the centre of it, which, if we were to use a real spider, I think it would be very untheatrical. We have to use puppetry. We have to create the spider, and we're not going to pretend that it's anything other than something we're making. But the audience enjoys that, and I think they enjoy very much seeing the characters and the scenes created. It has this kind of rolling effect. The cast are constantly creating new scenes. It's almost like we're following the characters around, and the scenes form around them as the story
Things
is.
Things almost coagulate.
Yeah, absolutely.
After each other.
Exactly that.
This sounds fantastic. It also sounds quite unusual, if I may say.
I'm not sure I can think of anything like it that's been done before.
Well, you've lured me, and you've mentioned a spider, so we might as well get onto the website.
Yes.
How can people... Thank you for your sympathy. Tell me, how can people see it, and where is it? And give me all the details.
It is at Oval House Theatre, which is a lovely theatre in Kennington, sort of medium-sized, very pleasant place, with a very good cafe, should you wish to eat before or after. It's running from the 31st of October to the 17th of November, with a number of different time slots to choose from. Over the half-term week, there are more matinees, and then they generally become evening performances. And Oval House is in Kennington, in South London.
Well, this is a good time for family treats anyway, isn't it? Every time from Halloween, Diwali and bonfire night, fireworks.
And I think it'll go down well with kids. I would say not for under sevens. I think it's too frightening, too complicated.
Children over, say, 25 and 30 would also enjoy it.
Will love it.
I.e. me.
Yes. And the website on which you can get booking details is simply www.ovalhouse.com. And that is Oval House as in the Oval, which is just opposite. So if you want to take in some cricket, you have to wait until the summer, I suppose, but you're in the right neck of the woods.
Well, why not go to the cafe once you're finishing the show and wait for the spring?
Wait for the spring.
James, thank you so much for telling us about the snow spider. And I'm also pleased to say that we're going to be talking about it again in a later episode of Musical Talk, perhaps in more depth.
Look forward to it.
But until that point, thank you for talking to us, and I look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you very much.
This episode of Musical Talk, edited and presented by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2012, except for the music, which was played with permission, and where the copyright remains with James Lark.